Welcome back to the KDF Leadership Profile Series, and we are discussing with the Kenya Army Commander, Lieutenant General Walter Raria Koipaton. We have been discussing a lot of issues, and we have a wide range of issues to still finish and clear with you. But let's start from where we should, finally, as we close down. What would you say is the Kenya Army contribution to security matters internally? We've spoken about the external matters. How about the internal matters? What is the contribution the Kenyan Army actually gives in internal security matters?
Essentially, the Constitution of Kenya mandates the Kenyan Army to work through very distinct roles. The first one is the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our nation, the protection of our people from external aggression. But then in this secondary role, we are mandated to cooperate and assist other authorities in times of natural disasters, calamities, and where there's some effect of unrest, that we cooperate and work with the other civil authorities to bring law and order into control in those areas. And therefore, apart from working across our borders, we also have the mandate of making sure that we are also peaceful back home.
Speak to me about Operation Boni, which was originally conceptualized to degrade Al-Shabaab, speaking as internal matters. How far has that gone? What are the successes? What do we know so far?
The operations in Lamu County and its environs today is called Operations Amani Boni. It has mutated from the first hard and tough names that were targeting the Al-Shabaab. And to the fact we have so far downgraded Al-Shabaab in this area. And this was a threat coming from the other side of the border, from Somalia, originating particularly from Jilib, Jamame, and Sako, through the Lakta Belt in southern Somalia, and getting its way into the Boni forest, and therefore creating instability in Lamu County, particularly the effects we had in Peketoni, Kilelengwani, Nyada, and Kipini, and therefore this became an area of concern. I am happy that today, as we speak, we see some semblance of normalcy coming back to this region because of the partnership we have created through a multi-agency approach to operations where all the security agencies work under the umbrella of the Operations Amani Boni to restore peace and normalcy in this region. Knowing that the threat was coming from across the border, we had a responsibility of separating the Al-Shabaab from the people. Because if they got adequate support from the communities, then it becomes difficult to deal with it. And therefore, I would say, to some extent, we have been able to manage the situation in this region, that we have now stayed for some months without direct hits by Al-Shabaab. And I am glad that the communities have been safe for some time. We have not had such serious attacks again in this region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of the New World Order brings with it these cyber security threats. What would you say is the Kenyan Army response to this, and how are you preparing for it, and how are you equipping for these new threats?
Cyber threats really talks to a complete new domain of war, like the land war, the war in the sea, and the Air Force being there to manage the airspace. I think the environment today is replete with a lot of war that is based on cyber and technology. And therefore, this is a new domain that needs to be managed because of the change in technological advancement. We are seeing this as a threat in itself. And the fact that it is not seen, it can permit in many areas and different forms. And therefore, we are keen to partner with other agencies under the new Cyber Command so that we mitigate against the threat of cyber threats. For the Army, we today have a social media policy, and therefore our troops are guided that through the public affairs, they must be able to watch out for areas that will probably affect us badly.
Absolutely. General, what is the role of Kenya Army in the national security multi-agency setup? And how does the Kenya Army, respond to it and effectively contribute to this setup?
I think on the multi-agency concept, first we bring our expertise in supporting other security agencies in dealing with issues that would be addressed through kinetic means. But again, I think through our courses, management courses at the National Defense College and strategic courses in the Defense Staff College. This is where we get the background of being able to manage not only issues of war, but also managing affairs within country. And to this end, if I were to go back to the Operations Amani Boni, we are not only operating kinetically in Boni, we also emphasize a lot on partnering with communities so that they understand us fully, that we are there for their good. And we are only not going to bother them, we are going to help them stand again and be able to defeat the bad guys with their partnership. To be able to do this, first of all, is to get to understand that the culture of where we are operating in Boni is different from where we are operating probably in Mount Elgon or in Lukchogio. And therefore we must understand the culture of the people, what are likes and dislikes. What are those things that bring them closer to us? What are those we must avoid because they will alienate them from us? You would realize that many of these places that are affected by insecurity have a poverty aspect in them. There is totally a change in the way school was being managed. The hospitals were left, and water resources are unavailable. So this is where we come in to rehabilitate some of the schools. We do boreholes, like as we speak. I'm aware of that we have gone up to 10 boreholes for Lamu County particularly, and Tana River. Last week we finished one in Hulugo Girls Secondary School, as well as the rehabilitation of underground water tanks in Shakani, so that they get water from close proximity. We are also right now constructing a school in Kolbio, so that the children in that area can go back to school. Besides this, we lift teachers every morning to some schools so that they can go back to, children can go back to school. On the medical side, we run CIMIC programs to treat the communities in the settlement areas on particular days of the month, because we know that in some of these areas they don't have fully fledged hospitals and they may probably rely on our support. This is not enough. And therefore, we continue to encourage those in the other lines of activity to consider construction of hospitals in some of these areas, even as we continue to provide security. And therefore, this is our contribution to security in the multi-agency setup.
And speaking of which, we are seeing more and more Kenya Defence Forces officers getting involved and being called into other areas of leadership away from the normal security and military engagements, things like the KMC or the NMS. What's that, and how should the public interpret this? I
think it must be positive for both of us. We who are doing and the public who is receiving. Yeah. First of all, we are not trained for KMC issues.
Certainly not.
We are not.
Yeah.
But as I alluded earlier, our management and strategic leadership courses prepare us for, because there must be technical people who do the technical work. But on management, you need people to manage it. I'm not saying there are not good people out there. There are many, and they are good. But individuals work differently. Yeah. We work through the organization called KDF. We collectively do these things not because I am here. It must be done because the army has been tasked. And I am tasked, and all those soldiers under me are tasked to do that job. And therefore, I'm pleased that the public has noted that we are being given those responsibilities, but not to be able to compete with them. We are not in competition at all with the civil authorities responsible to take up those jobs. And in the terms of reference that I have given by the CDF, it says, and any other task that may be given to me, I will do. And therefore, I cannot escape. I'll have to do that. We will be proud to serve Kenyans in that way too, so that Kenyans see our contribution not only in war fighting, but also in managing projects that impact on the lives of the Kenyans, particularly the common person.
Would you say this sort of direction, what is the impact of it on KDF in terms of outlook? It's sort of, you've mentioned it's a new way. It's one of the other ways you see the public should see what the KDF looks like. So this is, what's the impact of KDF overall, if you project, say, in 5-10 years, in these strategic roles that, you know, the military is taking in other civic roles?
Many armies have been known to do more than military, traditional military work. And we will also like to go that way, that there are things we can do that will have a good impact on our people. And therefore, moving forward, I see the Kenya Army Corps of Engineers expanding to be able to handle work besides combat engineering. If they go into civil engineering, whether horizontal or vertical, it will add value in what the country wants us to do for our people. And therefore, I find it very positive, and I believe it will also impact positively on the people. Secondly, we have been accused from time to time that we are closed society. We are now working within people, and I think that's another positive aspect. We want them to understand us from the humanitarian point of view, besides the combat work that we are tasked to do.
Well, one of the many ways that the Kenya Army is known for, and the military in general, is response to emergencies and disasters. How do you keep up with the standards? How do you make sure that this always remains a core sort of pillar in the military, as you also look for other areas, you know, as you say, in engineering and helping the public in other ways?
When a disaster happens, it impacts on people's lives and property. Many are killed, many are maimed. And I would recall one of our generals in the past said, we will not be students forever. And therefore it is time that we developed capacity to assist our people in times of such disasters. I'm happy the CDF has directed that we expand the scope of such entities so that they are able to handle disasters better, because disasters could come of bigger magnitude. And therefore, as a start, the DRU, Disaster Response Unit, based in Embakasi, is the unit responsible for mitigating disaster effects. But because the mother formation is the Engineers Brigade, as we continue to expand the Engineers Brigade, we expand the areas that DRU can leverage by getting resources to mitigate against these disasters. The DRU is prepared and ready, and for that matter, mission ready 24/7. They don't wait for instructions from anybody. A disaster strikes, they will be there. No call, nobody will ask them to go, they will go. They are the only unit allowed to go without instructions, whether it has happened in the north, in the south, or wherever in Nairobi.
I want to move to the whole country affair and talk about the Big Four. For instance, it's one of those key pillars that the government of the day has set eyes on. And part of strategic, the way I hear you, it's the Kenya Army will be involved in how the country moves forward and strategic sort of interests. In the space of universal healthcare, for instance, how is the Kenya Army plugging into that as a response to the Big Four?
Under the KDF, the Army fully embraces the concept of the Big Four agenda. And in provision of universal medical care, I earlier mentioned the regional hospitals we have, that we are upgrading, 6 of them. The wellness center I talked about earlier also is, I think, one of its kind. I have not seen another one, could be there, but I've not seen that will handle that kind of, those types of patients that I talked about. And therefore, in totality, this is intended to mitigate against medical challenges that our people face.
In terms of food security, as the other pillar, what is the Kenya Army doing towards that end?
The Kenya Army, under KDF, seconds officers and service members to the food factory in Gilgil. This is a factory intended to harness the vegetables, particularly during times of plenty in counties actually around Gilgil, to be able to collect and make sure that these vegetables are dehydrated and will be available for use when we don't have vegetables.
And there's obviously the general shortage of housing everywhere, and one of the other pillars is housing. And how's that a problem that KDF can help us fix the housing problem?
Affordable housing is a problem not only to KDF alone, it's outside there also. As much as we are soldiers, we are also parents. We want houses. Our children need roofs on top of their heads. And I'm happy that the government brought forward the affordable housing program. We have our Defense Forces SACCO, which through that umbrella, we try to acquire affordable housing for our service members. And therefore, through public-private partnership program, we are keen to follow up this so that it becomes an avenue from which we can get housing for our people.
Talk to me around the manufacturing pillar. What is the contribution of the Kenyan Army in manufacturing?
I think for manufacturing, we have the Kenya Ordnance Factory in Eldoret, where we manufacture our own ammunition. I think self-sufficiency in some of these things add to mission readiness. If you don't have them and somebody controls them in times of war, that becomes a problem because not everybody likes you in times of war.
General, I want to tap into your general advice. You've spoken to us a lot about what to do with human resource, how to motivate young people, millennials to work in, and all the challenges you have to deal with. I think you're the right person to give advice to, I think, the people in leadership who work under you, and even in private and public out there. What advice would you give people who are in leadership now on how to get the best out of human resource and the technology opportunity, as you say? How do you get the best out of it, as an advice from your experience and what you've spoken to us through this time?
Essentially, I would just want to talk to that, but not advise them. When we are in the military, we subordinate ourselves to the civil authority. It doesn't matter what level they are still my bosses. But the most important thing is to understand that this country needs all of us. And we have a responsibility that every generation that comes must leave something. And something that will be taken forward by the next generation. And therefore, we are in these positions today. We are not there tomorrow. We must do the best we can in all the areas we are deployed to make sure that we make positive contribution through integrity, observance of the rule of law, and setting examples.
As you went down, finally, there's always been a picture that the soldier is a man. It's always been this idealistic picture, but there's considerable effort to mainstream, gender and make sure that it's not just about men, it's also about women, and they're just not part of the truth, but part of the leadership. Speak to me about how that has happened and continues to happen in the military. As President Obama would like to say, if you go to play football without, half of the team, which is women, then you're planning to lose. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think as the Army, first of all, I have the largest number of women soldiers. I have the largest, not in one unit, but in most of them. And therefore, this is an area that we embrace fully, and we understand that they are just as good as the men we have. We will not shy. There are areas of challenge that we understand, but it is for us to employ them in accordance with the ability of the individual and capitalize on their knowledge, not the physical part only. And we today understand that there are many areas that they contribute a lot, as even though they are female soldiers or officers. I have several in command positions, and I don't regret placing them there because they are doing the best they could. And therefore, mine is to encourage girls out there to come to the Army because it is ready to embrace them, and they will make a living out of this Army.
All right, you've heard it from the man himself, hearing his thoughts, his reflections. This has been the KDF Leadership Profile Series, and we've been talking to the Lieutenant General and the Kenya Army Commander himself, Lieutenant General Walter Raria Koipaton. Thank you very much, sir, for making time to talk to us.
The pleasure is mine.
It's been very fruitful.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, and God bless you.